This is Straight Up Talk with Sharon and Peter. We are both proud Brits and Canadians. This is a no-nonsense weekly podcast about people, life, leadership, and all sorts of stuff. We don't always agree. I'm Sharon Jones, business owner of Be A Better You, developing better managers and leaders, and this is...
Pete Johnson, owner of Move Man Traders, buy and sell anything.
This is true, you do. The topic for this week is communications. Now, communications is a big topic. We're going to do this a lot. The specifics for this week, though, is going to be about language. So, first of all, definition of communication. It is the act or process of exchanging information, ideas, feelings or messages between individuals through speech, signals, writing or behaviour. You and I obviously are both from the UK, therefore we speak British, we're English. When we came to Canada, we had to learn Canadian, and we go to America, so we speak 3 languages now. We speak English, Canadian, American. And you think it'd be the same, but it's not. Canadian does seem to be a bit of a mishmash of both, and there's many parts to it. So what I'm going to do is not go down that route so much as we're going to talk about assumptions here. And I'm going to start out by telling one of my own stories, because assumptions is another big issue. This goes back to many years ago when I had a partner doing Be A Better You workshops. I would work from home, she would work from home. We used to create workbooks, print them off. I had a really fancy Canon 6-colour inkjet printer. Now, if you know anything about printers, they typically come in 4 colours. It's called CMYK, and those are the 4 colours of cyan, magenta, yellow and black. Most printers come with that. Mine came with an additional 2 colours, green and red. So we developed this workbook. She was coming over because we were going to print them out, collate them, and I realised I was out of green ink. Now, she lived about 40 minutes away from me. We were on a time project here because we were delivering this workshop in the afternoon. So I called her up and I said, on your way here, I know you go past a Staples or a Best Buy, can you stop in and get me some Canon green ink? She said, sure. So I'm working away, completing the design of these workbooks. She arrives at my house about an hour later, knocks on the door, I open it, and she says, here you go, here's your ink. And I look at it, and it's cyan ink. And I said, I asked for green ink. And she said, I thought you meant cyan. In that moment, this is where assumptions tripped us up. The funny thing, of course, is the workshop we were about to do was on communications. So here's what should have happened. I should have realised that the printer I had was unusual and given her a bit more explanation. I've got a 6-colour inkjet printer. I need Canon green ink. Give her more specificity. She also could have said to me, are you sure that you mean green ink? A lot of the times what people don't do, and from a psychological point of view, we do it to shortcut because our brains like to think we know what we mean. The brain tries to be very efficient with information, so it goes, I know this, so it fills in the gap of what it thinks it should be based on the knowledge that you have. The result, though, of that assumption was that we lost time and money, and we almost didn't make the workshop for that one tiny assumption.
Yeah.
Over to you, Peter.
Well, my story goes back about 25 years when I made an assumption, and it could have been very costly to me, but fortunately it turned out okay. We're doing a job for this client. She was a lady we knew from the tennis club, and she booked me in to do a clearance. Like a large part of our work when we first started out uptown was rubbish clearance. Rubbish is like for all the Canadian listeners, garbage. So she said, I've got a garage and it's full of rubbish. I just need you send a couple of guys around, pick everything up and dump it. So after work, I think it was a Wednesday, she said, just fit it in when you can do it, in next week would be great. So after work, we finished a bit early. We went round there And she lived at, I think it was 137 something hill, and there was flats A, B, C, D, and she lived in flat C. So we went round to the back, and there was 4 garages. They didn't have letters on them, but we just assumed A, B, C, D. She's C, so it'd be the 3rd garage. So we went in there, opened the door, and he loaded everything onto the truck, and there was all this nice weightlifting equipment, gym equipment. There was some really nice bathroom tiles. There was a bike, like an exercise bike. So anyway, later that night she...
and you thought she wanted that to go to the tip?
Yeah,
to the dump.
So later that night she called me. She said, "Pete, did you get to take all the stuff away?" I said, yeah, we did. Luckily, we got it in. We just fit it in time. I said, but and I'll call her Mandy. Her name wasn't Mandy, but I'll call her Mandy. I said, Mandy, I said, but there's one thing. I said, you're getting rid of a lot of good stuff there, like gym equipment, exercise bike. You got some really nice bathroom tiles. She said, exercise bike? Do I look like I could use an exercise bike? Gym equipment? Do I look like the person that would have any use for gym equipment? And bathroom tiles? I don't have any tiles in my bathroom. I said, oh. So the pennies dropped. So anyway, she said, which garage did you take them from? So I said, well, A, B, C, D. We took them for she said, no, that's next doors. One of the tenants, because the properties were rented out as well, one of the tenants over the years had switched C and D around, so it became A, B, C, D. Like the rock group, AC/DC, A, B, C, D. So anyway, I said, well, luckily the dump was closed because it was a council-run dump, and they shut at 4, and it was like 5:30 by the time we finished. So we had it on the truck, and so luckily, and we returned it all. I said, don't worry. I said, we've picked up the stuff from D garage instead of C, and we returned it, first thing the next morning. But I often wonder, and I've asked you this before, if there's anyone legally qualified to answer this. What would have happened had we made it to the dump that evening and just dumped it all? And then the guy wakes up and says, I'm just going to go to the gym for half an hour, goes to his garage and there's no equipment there.
Well, I think you'd have been liable because you made an assumption.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? That's the bottom line, because the lady would have, Mandy would have said, well, I didn't. Yes, I said my garage. Okay, Mandy, did you tell him which garage it was? Oh, no, I didn't. So she may have some culpability there, but I would guess because you didn't ask specifically.
We would just have to have replaced it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh dear.
So,
that would have been a big mistake.
Well, the problem is that miscommunication in the workplace alone costs billions of dollars globally. When people end up having to, I'll give you actually a prime example from my background. I used to be Vice President Client Services at one of the largest global advertising agencies in Toronto, for, and one of my clients was HP, Hewlett Packard. And they had been, it was Compaq, then it was HP. Honestly, technology was not my jam. It wasn't my favourite thing. I had account directors who were passionate about technology, which was great. I would always get them to go to the client, take the brief the creative. I looked over it all, of course, but I didn't do that stuff. One day, my main account manager, account director, who was responsible for that business, was ill. I had to go to HP and pick up the brief. As the client is talking, I realised I didn't really know what she was talking about. This is a long time ago. Didn't know what she was talking about. But instead of asking, I thought I'll bluff my way through it.
Ooh.
I know. So I created a brief for it. I briefed the creative department. They came back with some ideas that fit my brief. We then set up a meeting with the client. And I always like to have the creative people present their work so that they could showcase it. It's not my job, it's theirs. So they're starting to go through the ideas and the concepts, and the client puts her hand up and she says, "What is this?" And I start to feel a bit uncomfortable in my seat. What's the problem? She said, "This is not what I briefed you on." And at that point,
Oops.
It's not very often that I go red. I probably went a deep shade of crimson at that point.
Yeah.
as the penny dropped for me of the implications of not checking my assumptions and not asking for the specifics.
Yeah.
I had cost the creative department money. I had thoroughly pissed off the client.
Did you get fired?
No, I didn't. Amazingly, I've never been fired. I once told a client to sling the hook. And I wasn't supposed to do that, but that's a different story entirely. But no, I didn't get fired. I just had to admit my failings. That
I like the Faddy story. Is that
that
is that the same company?
I know. So interesting. Relates to communication in that you and I, obviously both from the UK. I moved here in 1997. I'm from Manchester, which is the north of England, and typically Manx, as we are called. We tend to talk very fast and very flat, so if you're not from Manchester, you haven't got a clue what we're talking about. That is how I arrived in Canada talking. My first big job at an agency, I was a vice president group account director at another big agency, and we had a big project meeting. And so there's about 25 people, and it's a round table. And there was this one guy, and he was rather large. And he seemed to know the answers. He was the project manager. And people were calling him and asking him a question. So I thought, I need to ask him a question. So I said, "So, Fatty, tell me." And the whole room went, "Oh!" So, what? You just called him Fatty. Now, to be fair, he was a bit of a humper-lumper. So I said, "Well, that's exactly what you're calling him." Because I thought, wow, how progressive is Canada? You know, we're being honest here. And they said, "No, his name is Faddy with a D." So
Turkish name, isn't it? Faddy?
Yeah. But because of how they pronounced it, I interpreted the
How
T.
embarrassing.
So I'd call him Fatty.
Hey, Fatty. Yes. Well, that was my nickname when I was at Butley's.
Yeah, but you were... No. Well, you got that because you were thin.
Oh, yeah. It was an ironic nickname.
That was an ironic... Now you could say it's not ironic.
Now they should call me Skinny.
Exactly. But that's, the whole thing about communications is interesting in that, I also remember another guy coming to me, and I'd been talking about what I wanted to happen on this project. And he said, "I've no idea what you said, but I'll have it on your desk by Monday."
Yeah.
I realised then I had to learn how to slow down.
Yeah, you've really tamed it down a lot.
Well, except when I have a drink.
I remember you 40 odd years ago. You was like, my love, how's it going there? I'm not from South Manchester.
Yeah, I know, but you're doing North Manchester then. Yeah. You're doing Oasis. You're doing Oasis. So I had to put cadence into my speech as well.
Yeah.
To be able to enunciate properly. Otherwise, I'd just get those blank stares looking back at me. And another thing, actually, about communications, just recently we got at the barn where I keep my horse. There's a young girl, lovely girl, very much into Harry Potter. And she said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Of course you can." She said, "What does barking mean?" So I said, "You have to give me a bit of context."
Crazy.
Give me a bit of context. And this was from Harry Potter, of course. She's a big Harry Potter fan. It's written in English. So, of course, we know barking means...
Barking mad.
Mad.
Yeah.
And she didn't understand why. So then I had to explain what it meant. And then she also asked me, "Well, what does blimey mean?" So she's been...
God blimey.
God blimey.
Yeah.
It means it's a statement of surprise.
Yeah.
But it's another difference of communication. And I think the key to it all is when we are sending a communication out, you know what you mean. And this is what often happens, is we know what we mean when we send the communication out, and we assume that the receiver knows exactly what we mean. But often they don't. A way to find out if you're making assumptions or not is to ask yourself, how do I know this to be true? Is also, if you say things like, "Well, obviously," how do you know that's obvious? Or, "Well, everybody knows that." How do you know everybody knows that? It's a pain to do. I still make assumptions because I'm human and it's taxing on the brain. But those big things, it's worthwhile slowing yourself down. And I say it to you sometimes. It's driven you nuts in the past. When I've said to you, "Well, how do you know that to be true?" When you've lost your rag at me and said, "Stop being a trainer."
Yeah.
Because you have to
You
remember,
do often bring your training self into your normal self.
into my relationship self.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there are times I should put that aside.
But I've got the benefit of having watched you train a few times, and I've noticed that quite often you say to people, does that make sense? Are you with me? Does that, what I've said so far, do you understand what I'm saying? And are you with me, sort of thing? And does it make sense to you? And quite often, you know, the whole group just says, yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Which is interesting, because I've just read that asking somebody, does that make sense, is not a good question. So I need to change.
You used to say it quite a lot.
I know I did, because at the time I thought that was a good way of checking in. But the problem is, when you ask that question, it's got a yes or no response. Most people in those situations are going to say yes.
Right.
So now, instead, what I'll say is there anything that I haven't covered? Are there any questions coming to mind for you? Sometimes I'll even say, would anybody care to play that back to me, just so that I know I've said it in the right way?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say, are you with me? Yeah, I am. Nobody actually wants to admit that they don't know something. So I'm continually learning, because I think that's very important to do so, especially in communications. So I think, we've done quite a bit on communications right now.
You could go on for hours about communication.
And there will be more topics. I've got a whole list here of examples of words that have different meanings, which we can cover in a different topic, because that's a fun one.
That's for another day.
It is. So, brutally honest takeaway of the week about communication. For me, communication is a two-way street. There has to be a transmitter and a receiver. The transmitter needs to ensure that the message is received as intended, and ideally the receiver should also check that they have understood it. But that's a big cognitive ask. The shortfall of this is try to be as clear and specific as you can when communicating. Peter, your takeaway.
Well, again, I'll keep it simple and just ask everybody in the room, are you okay with that? do I need...
You don't want to explain it again.
No.
You know, you're actually very good at communicating. Just last quick story though. I remember when I was doing some time management training, and you came with me, and I was doing it in an office, and you just assumed that everybody in office was going to be smart and able to communicate effectively. Do you remember that?
I do.
And you were blown away by the fact that it wasn't the case, and you're actually a far better communicator than you give yourself credit for.
Oh, thank you.
Truth. On that note, thank you for listening. If you want any more info, or to let us know what you'd like us to talk about, go to the website beabetteryou.ca, and there'll be a link called podcast. And this week's podcast has been thoughtfully produced by the Isle of Sound. Thank you and good night.
Thank you and good night.